Night as Ghana's economic woes deepen, we will hear from the latest economic messiah on exactly what is wrong with our markets and how to fix it permanently. We'll also be exploring as more calls come from people who are demanding cushioning following recent hikes in fuel prices with a man who has managed this economy previously. But first, the latest development in Parliament as Speaker Alban Bagbin suspends all business coming from the Finance Ministry following the failure of Minister Ken Oforiatta to honor an invitation to account for the expenditure related to the COVID period. This, we understand, is the fifth time this is happening in the Parliament of Ghana. We should be going to Parliament and first speaking to the minority and getting in studio here, the Member of Parliament, Dr. Stephen Amoah, who's been talking about the economy in a very different light, research-based, propounding theories for the very important development and evolution, and more importantly, to fix the Ghanaian economy permanently. We'll be hearing him out and also hear him on the parliamentary situation we find on our hands. But first, let's have a conversation with the member of the former finance minister. We should be able to speak to former Finance Minister Sek Tepe on recent calls for the very situation we find ourselves to be improved one way or the other. There are already people suffocating from all of the things related to the economy, from inflation through to the current galloping of prices on the market, and also, more importantly, from the recent increases in the fuel at the pump. This is what the minister will join us deal with and ask, what can the current minister and the current government do differently that will bring relief to the ordinary Ghanaian, mindful of what's currently happening? Honorable Sek Tepe, you're welcome to our front.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your colleagues and to your viewers and listeners.
I hope you are doing well. Your successor is currently in some bit of hot waters as he failed to appear in Parliament for, let's say, the fifth time or so. The Parliament is not happy. Speaker has suspended all business related to the Finance Ministry to actually make sure that he is brought back to deal with the COVID expenditure. Familiar terrain?
Well, with the difficulties, I would say that, some issues are quite familiar. In relation to Parliament, we all know the oversight role of Parliament. I have heard, a number of reasons, given for the inability of the minister to attend to Parliament. But it is one of the paramount duties, of ministers to attend to not just the House as a whole, but to committees. So it's more like the Minister for Finance is the counterpart from the executive, for the Finance Committee of Parliament, and particularly the Public Accounts Committee. These are the finance related. But there are instances where it comes to loans and the rest, where if the loan relates to a sector, then you do have some of those responsibilities. So it's a wide ranging. Let me also state that the Constitution permits ministers, to even participate in debates. We move motions, we used to move motions, you propose resolutions. The only thing you cannot do, if you are not a minister MP, is you cannot vote. And so our constitution places a lot of responsibility. And that is why you see, for example, when the budget is presented, that it is the minister who moves the motion for the consideration and of the financial proposals. So I would hope that, there will be some way in which the Ministry of Finance, and the minister would come to some amicable resolution of whatever is preventing the minister from going to Parliament, because it's for example, next month ending, statutorily, now in law, the minister is supposed to be in Parliament for the media review. So I think it's very important development.
Conversation. Of course, he'll be coming in pretty soon, and that conversation is supposed to happen. But let me spend a second and understand where these things happen from. We understand that he's supposed to account for COVID expenditure. Some members of Parliament are counting this to be the fifth time this incident is actually happening in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Is the Wednesday request from him a justified request?
I do not have all the facts, and I think it may be presumptuous for me to talk about justification or not. But I think when the Right Honorable Speaker himself intervenes and suspends, dealings with the Ministry of Finance. Remember, it's the Ministry of Finance, not the Minister of Finance. Then I think it's taking a serious dimension, and this is where I believe there must be some quick resolution because finance bills are very important. There's significant, work that has to be done. And let me also say that, questions to the executive, ministers is a routine in Parliament, and it's not always that the answers you go and give are palatable, but it's a responsibility which you have to, discharge. Sometimes, you have grasp of the situation, and that is when you also probably so your graphs, debate the issues. Because there'll be questions, there'll be debates, there'll be questions. That's also part of the constitution, part of the standing orders of the House. And so those responsibilities are well known.
Okay, so there's a question though that's dear to the hearts of many on this one. There is already an expenditure of some what they call a loan that's supposed to be for the Parliament or the Republic of Ghana. We're talking about some 75 million euros or so. That's been put on hold. It's already taking a bite on government business, isn't it?
Definitely. And remember, you also when it comes to loans, you have institutions who are the ministry. I mentioned the real sector. If it's a finance, loan, there's a Ministry of Finance. And it's not just the 5 million. You remember, you recall that one of the discussions in the last, 2 weeks is a proposed 1 billion, loan that is being, negotiated with a 750 million. And it's quite clear from the interviews that was given to Bloomberg that the Minister of Finance would, in short time, go to Parliament, to have a discussion, on that. So that is even more significant, than the 7. I don't know the purpose of the 5 million. I've not seen the standing orders, but comparing if you say 50 million or whatever euros to 750 million, which is very key to financing the budget, then I think that this is why I'm saying that the course on which we are trading, including a media review, makes it necessary for this issue to be resolved as expeditiously as possible, because it is business of the state that is bound to suffer.
There's a question, though, I have to ask you about moving out of Parliament. The finance minister has other hurdles to deal with, as in the headaches of the state, including the current almost skyrocketing fuel prices. We understand that we are expecting at some of the pumps an increase. Even this evening, Star Oil takes the lead in this particular area. You have been finance minister before. My question directly to you is, for those calling for government to cushion them, the president said we cannot take off taxes with 4 billion being lost in the process. Is it time for us to relook at some of these taxes? What can be done to bring reprieve and relief to the suffering masses of this country? I wanted to... Yes. If I can hear you.
We are back to the budget. When it comes to government fiscal management, it is a budget. And I'm mentioning the budget because we have to look at what is going on in the context of the budget. We have a budget, which has a deficit, of 11 or 13%, depending on how you look at it. If you adjust for arrears, which some of us think is low, we're talking about probably 15% deficit, which must be financed. Now, we also know, and it's common knowledge, that the total revenue that we are generating, not just tax revenue, is virtually taken up by compensation and interest only. That is wages, and interest. So what we are going to discuss now in terms of, either a relief by taking off, some taxes, or a relief in the more common form of a subsidy should come from the budget. And if these two items are taking much of the, revenue, almost all the revenue, then it means that we are back to the discussion of the financing, loans. because the rest of the budget is being financed by loans, including refinancing loans that we have taken already, because there's no room, to pay them from our own resources, according to the structure of the budget. So it is a budget discussion, and these are some of the subjects, the issues that has to be discussed, media review, or as the Deputy Minister said, these are the issues, these are the pressures that prompts one to go to the IMF, which the government does not seem to be ruling out, any longer. So let us look at the two options: subsidy, and then taking up petroleum, some prices of the petroleum products. Now, the main prices apart from excise, so the main taxes apart from excise that is on the petroleum is the ESLA. And you recall that ESLA became necessary because of the energy crisis. But the larger context is that every economy faces crisis, and Ghana has faced its share of crisis. So ESLA and the Petroleum Revenue Management Act were designed to respond to some of these, crises. Let me be specific about petroleum prices. We can, if we have time, we can look at some of the others, like the sinking fund, which relates to the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Now, in that ESLA, when we talk about the ESLA levy, it's not one levy. There's an enhanced road levy, which was supposed to be used to pay contractors who were owed.
You're not here on time.
Then there is the core energy sector levy, which was supposed to pay off the subsidy and debt that at the time VRA and other institutions were owing as a result of the lack of gas supply from Nigeria, if you remember, which led to the whole situation about doing so. So there is an element of ESLA called the price stabilization levy. That was meant to pay off outstanding subsidies coming out of doing so. And then we launched two initiatives. Apart from that payment, part of the money was ring-fenced for what many countries call strategic stock. You would have heard when the crisis started that President Biden said they were going to release, stocks which they have been keeping. South Africa, some other countries also have this. And what a strategic stock simply means is that when prices are low, then you buy and you fill the tanks. So you will see that there's a correlation between what I'm saying with BOST. It's bulk oil storage. So apart from, let's say, storing processed crude from Tor, the purpose is also to build a lot of farm tanks, pipelines that can hold and store. So we started a policy using part of the ESLA, to buy. Remember, at the time the ESLA was done, the prices were quite low. And so what is done with the strategic stock is that you buy, when the price is low. And then as the price increases, you release at slightly higher prices to make a profit and to be able to expand the scheme. So this was started. And you will recall that it is a combination of these schemes together with the liberalization that led to, around about June 2015, PetroQ stopping. Since then, we have never heard about PetroQs. It didn't come, by magic. It came as a result of a certain planning. I'm mentioning this to show that we can follow what other countries have done, and we did start some of these, policies. Indeed, towards 2016, by the end of 2016, the strategic stock started with the ESLA funds. You will notice that prices of crude oil started moving up, and by 2017 had moved up. So we started the release, and that was the reason why the liberalization held and prices stabilized. If you recall those days, Goil in particular, which was buying some of those strategic stock, was the one that was keeping, the prices, quite low. Now this scheme has stopped, and we've been through low prices. Now we are at high prices. If we had some of those schemes, one is not saying is the total solution, but at least there is evidence that between 2015, 2016, when this scheme was started, it worked until now. When even crude prices were somewhere, but of course it was stopped around 2018. Now when prices start to escalate, then, you begin, because you don't have the stocks. But the second reason also is that much of that revenue it has been collateralized. Remember, the ESLA revenue has been collateralized. So, one, it's not just because there will be a hole in the budget, but it is because we cannot meet, unless we get funds from elsewhere in the budget that's already tight, we cannot honor, the pledge or the commitment in using the ESLA funds for the loan. The question is, what happened to that loan? Why was it not used to pay depositors? Why was it not used, for stocks? So that's one reason that, the levies cannot go. The second reason is that the source for subsidy is gone because it's also being collateralized.
Okay.
And with the budget itself, we used to depend on the budget itself to provide a subsidy. And because of that tightness, that's why we started this. Instead of depending on the budget itself, to pay debt, for which reason we set up the sinking fund, which is depleted. We used to fall on the budget, to meet crises, whether it is rains, it is drought, it is commodity prices that are falling and whatever. So the Ms. Mahama administration thought that one way in which countries stop these recurring things is to set up these funds, sinking fund, stabilization fund, and so you are now seeing the rationale for some of them. You know the outcome that when COVID struck, stabilization fund, for example, we went straight to Parliament to take 250 million. As we speak, we have taken out almost 400 million. But by taking out that much from the stabilization fund, it also means that we are not preparing for the next crisis.
It appears not so comforting. Forgive me, but I was saying that it appears not so comforting to come to the point, and I appreciate the fact that you don't seem to be saying we can't get any reprieve at all.
Well, I'm saying that the reprieve will come only when you have budget space, and there is no budget space. Because remember, because of the lack of budget space, because we have not been able to go to the market since last year, to get the sovereign bonds, not just for budgetary purposes, but to refinance.
Okay.
Now, if you don't go to the external market, then you come to the domestic market to borrow. I think that your station and others have reported that government is not able to raise all the money it needs on the domestic market. Any effort to raise that money, would mean government would have to offer higher interest rates. And already the interest rates are going up as a result of the situation in advanced countries. Just yesterday, the Fed increased, prices. And that means that when we go and borrow, once the Fed increases the prices, it means that dollar, loans or bonds will also go up. So we have a number of things stuck up against us now, at the very point, that we need this. There's a Ukraine war, which is also bringing imported inflation. Yes. If I may just run up on the first situation which you brought up. So I'm saying that one, the flows, which should have come in for the subsidy has been collateralized, and therefore you can neither get the money for subsidy or you cannot afford, because the budget is tight, to remove, some of the prices until you get, some budget space. It's not possible. And then it's also very difficult because other situations like the Ukraine war, the Russia fuel, the embargo, as well as the sanctions and things are affecting. That this situation used to apply. In summary, what I'm saying is that we ought to learn going through this, or we have to continue with what led us to establish, prepare the grounds when the times are better. The times will never be the best. Okay. But like a household, the reason you save is not because...
I get your point. I guess we need to thank you so much for your time this evening on this particular point. And ladies and gentlemen, we come in studio. When I started this conversation, I brought in a man. He's former Maslow boss. He's member of parliament for Industrialization. He's also been doing a lot of great work. And his PhD work was an interesting topic that he's been evolving into a much more recent conversation. Dr. Stephen Acquah, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're also the Finance Committee of Parliament.
Yes, sir.
Very active member of that committee. and it's not just what you've been saying that's important. It's the fact that you recently made a very important appreciation of the issues that we need to put in perspective. You believe that there's a fundamental anomaly on our market. You talk about how T-bills, that's the treasury bill rates, over the years gives returns higher than risky assets, which is mostly in the private sector. So that people who do not know the detailing of economics and the very jargons that are displayed in there, why do you think our current market structure, in and of itself, and the results it delivers, it's actually somewhat problematic? What is the fundamental anomaly that's affecting this economy?
Thank you very much. My regards to our viewers.
Yes.
It's
the way
just
you're smiling. I hope Parliament is fine.
I'm so tired. I feel very weak.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's not your fault.
Okay, all right. Well.
I think the whole thing is about a few issues that, as a country, we have been lamenting or pondering over for so many years. I think it cuts across all regimes. Mm-hmm. And listen to the following areas or variables I'm going to talk about. High cost of doing business.
Yeah. For a very long time,
that is interest rates.
On the ease of doing business report, which stopped ranking some years ago anyway.
2, exchange rate.
Yeah. Basically the city.
3, unemployment. Mm-hmm. 4, import-driven economy. Mm-hmm. These issues have been raised like 1 million times, and all the time we are raising. I'm not saying we are not doing anything. I can't say it. I'm not saying government, past and present, are not doing anything. Mm-hmm. But the point is, are we going to talk about these things in perpetuity without, for once, identifying the basic fundamentals and the causes and say that we want to have this practical approach towards that? There are a lot of them. I can't go through them. But the whole thing that I'm bringing up, that you ask me a question, is that fundamentally, all well-developed economies in the world, there is no way that any economy is properly developed with a very good, efficient market. You have treasury bills giving returns more than risky assets on the market. It's not done anywhere. It's not done. Because they say that the higher the risk, the higher expected returns. Mm-hmm. If I have money and I invest in EcoBank, and I invest the same amount in your company, I'm expecting that, or it is expected that EcoBank gives me less returns than you, because in terms of risk, you're a bigger component. The same way government securities are supposed to offer less returns all over. And listen to me, we have models or formulas we use to calculate price these things, determine the deposit rates and stuff like that. The basic factor or the initialization value in any market, if it's well organized, is the T-bill rate. So if I put my money in any bank, the returns I'm expected to get, or I have to get, is the rate of the T-bill in that country on the market, plus a premium to compensate for the risk I took. But here is the case that many a time, I send you a graph that I had worked on. Many a time, if you were the one, the T-bill rates are rather higher than the market, the risky assets rate or returns.
Does that not show the peculiarities of our economy?
So that peculiarity is contradicting basic principles of risk and return in investment. So it means there's something to be fixed. 2, if because of the banks in Ghana mostly invest in government securities, which means the funds they have rather go into government securities between about 57 to almost 70%. What it means is that private sector actors that actually create value chains to employ people to produce to meet demand
will not get a credit,
are not getting adequate funds. If they will get the limited funds, the rate will be so high. So our economy, I describe it as double-digit interest rate economy. And it's not only under this regime or previous. It's been problems that there, and we know these problems are there. And because the private sector does not have the opportunity to access adequate funds and produce to meet aggregate demand in Ghana, we are forced to import almost everything. And because we are importing everything, our city will definitely be weak all the time because there's obligation on our part to demand for somebody's currency. I wanted
to scale back a little bit and start from the point where you talk about TB rates and actual risk investments in other areas and why you think it should not be so when TB rates gives a higher return than these other, what they call it, investment. Why do you think it is the case in Ghana? Why is the TB rate, it appears more lucrative than the other investments that you're talking about?
Normally, if you want to go into, there are a lot of technicalities. I run a lot of simulations, research and analysis.
So that's why I
don't want to go into the models and the theories and all those I use. I think market forces determine some of these things.
By market forces.
If it is in a very competitive market and the market is efficient, this thing shouldn't happen. Look, how come that
So, for example, let me give you an example. Okay. If government, for example, if the central bank raises the prime rate to the point that...
Now we're talking about the treasury bills. Don't let us confuse with all other rates.
Yes.
Other than that, the whole discussion will be thrown out of the direction.
I'm getting the point here. I'm saying that who controls the TB rates?
Basically, is Bank of Ghana. I think
the
it's part
central
of
bank.
Yeah,
Yes.
Central Bank.
So,
but then there are forces.
Yeah, I get
market
your point.
forces.
So
except that,
I'm drilling down to why we have that problem on our hands. That's what I want you to point it out for me.
If you say why we have that problem, I'm being very honest with you. It will be very difficult for me to say one, this, two, that, three, that. But I think one, management of our fiscal space. Because if government is in need of money, okay, and the government is obliged, government will really hurriedly go onto the market and borrow, probably out of frustration or whatever it is. And because we have other market forces, these factors, matrix of factors will come together to determine the rate. I am not really now thinking about why. I'm thinking about the acceptance of what is happening. Then as stakeholders, how best can we get these things resolved and get back or get to the level where doing business in Ghana, cost will be so less, availability will be there, so the private sector can expand, employ a lot of people, so that we cut down importation because we produce almost everything. And the problem with our ritually weak city will actually good, because look, it could even be that the TB rate, it could be, I don't have evidence of that. Okay. It could be that there could be also a cartel. In very bad...
We should have the TB rates.
Sorry?
We should have the
It's
TB
also
rates.
possible. Market forces. So probably we have to go into who are the major buyers. Because anytime there is underpriced...
It's not the banks.
I'm coming. These are technical areas, so if you don't allow me to flow...
No, I get your point, but I get your point to be...
You see, these are technical...
I want you to break it down.
But if I'm breaking it down, you don't let me finish my saying, you ask, you throw the whole thing out of gear. I get your point.
Admittedly.
Do you get my point? What I'm saying is, I was making a point that whenever there's underpriced or overpriced securities on our market, critically, the prices are very critical to holders and issuers. For instance, government is the issuer of T-bills.
Yeah.
Okay? Holders are those who invest in them. Once those things happen, it benefits rather than arbitrages, those who take advantage of systems like free. But it becomes unfavorable to the bigger economy. The point I want you to basically practically understand, and everybody, is that this thing contributes to high cost of business in our country and anywhere this thing will happen. One, because banks see lucrative opportunities, high returns from seemingly or classified risk-free areas, they push their monies there. And because of this thing, we cannot produce from our private sector the things we need in Ghana, so we import almost everything. And because we import, we tend to demand for foreign currencies. And because of that, there is always depreciation of the cedi, that's one. Two, unemployment is high. Three, we don't get what we are supposed, the industries are underperforming. So we need to correct that. And even the existing formulas we used to do that. That's why that led to the new improved formula I've come out with, the proposed formula I've come out with for my work that you ask.
Yeah. We'll get to that point.
Okay, fine. But basically...
I suspected you were going there, so we get to that point.
Basically, you need to understand these things that I'm talking about. Even without finance, what I'm saying makes sense. If you will give me less returns, if I invest with you, and I invest with EcoBank, they will give me more returns. Which one will I send my money?
You go to EcoBank.
Thank you. If government is giving me more returns than EcoBank, government and EcoBank, which one will I go?
You actually will go to government.
Government, and it is opposite. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get you.
And because it's opposite, all these problems we are having, to me, of course, there could be other factors. But basically, this has been the ritual problems that so many years we go through. So that when there's a small hit on somebody's market, we go out of hands.
Do you see this as the fundamental problem?
One of them, very, 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 very important. But if the developed economies, T-bills ranges 1.5 to 2%. And here, even T-bills today is around between 21, 24. And then the bank's fixed deposits are averagely between 9, that is the industry average, between 9 and about 11 and 12. Look, almost, and one thing is, the banks, there's a lag. When you say lag, like banks find it long time to respond to even some of these changes on our market. So right now, if somebody has money, the person will quickly push, or the institution will quickly to T-bills. So private sector will go down. They won't have money. And even if they have interest rate, will always be very high, double digit, and will not be competitive. I think this cycle is so clear. There could be reasons why. But once the reasons do not solve our problems, and we'll continue to wallow in this and dwindle the potential we have as a country to attain long-term economic growth and stability, create a lot of jobs, have a very resilient economy, very strong city, and a low interest rate, and expand our industries, it is a problem.
In 2011, what you were just saying about how basically we are crowding out the private sector and preventing them from accessing needed capital for their expansion and the very things that will create jobs in the country. A similar theory was propounded, actually was expressed by Professor Ernest Aite in his work for the group Brookings Institute.
And the formula is there, or the model, or he wrote it.
He didn't do a formula on it. Then, together with Professor Peter Korte of the Economics Department at the University of Ghana, a similar discussion about how, if you really want to fix capital for the private sector, the first place you should go to.
Oh, wow. Just like what I'm doing today.
Yeah, so, yes. So, I'm coming to the point of, but all of them came to the point that at some point, the biggest player in all of this is the government of the Republic of Ghana. They should take the lead in doing something about the situation. Is this something I agree with?
Oh, in fact, all over the world, major policies that are affecting any society, first thing to do, or first factor to look at, of course, is those in authority, policy makers. And of course, with that, we can't do that without we call something policy boundary factors. You understand what I'm saying? Variables or factors that are important or having strong correlation to or with what is happening. Of course, Bank of Ghana is seen to be independent, but there's some sort of interconnections. So the Bank of Ghana, that is the regulatory framework or body, and then, of course, you can't take away government, even as well as even the banking sector. Because what is happening is that all these things that we are talking about, in my opinion, market forces, and I also think policy issue. So we need to, first thing that we need to do, not to drag each other, argue, do this, and say that, okay, is this thing true? Is it real? Does it make sense? Once we accept as a country, okay, then how best can we solve it without apportioning?
Are there those disputing this?
Oh, no, I haven't seen anyone. The point is...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Actually,
because I knew of this, and I asked and searched for who else is on the same thinking level with you. Those are the people that I actually made reference to. It appears that they agree that, yes, there's a problem. That's what I was asking about. How do we fix it from there? So generally, I think that people are on the leopard that is being stated consistently that this is a problem we need to deal with. Why are we not getting enough or less expensive, if you want to call it, credit for the private sector that's going to create the jobs, that's going to employ the people, that's going to actually grow the economy from all the other ends. Why are we not being able to do so? Why are the banks, and they reference them, the banks running to government treasury bills instead of giving the money to the people who would be growing the economy?
Because of higher returns. And government securities are classified in any well-established economic jurisdiction as risk-free.
Yeah.
So you understand what I'm saying? So
it's
actually, and the point is, this thing made me actually research into the models we have in the world, the formulas. Mm-hmm. And you realize that the optimal ones, apart from capital asset pricing model by Sharpe, and then arbitrary, APT by Ross. Capping was, I think, 1964. APT, I think, 1976. These were the earlier ones, I would say the traditional ones. But we had the optimal ones by Hanan and Lian. They put their heads together in 1993. They did something that was probably giving us more optimal approach or result. But they had a problem. And that problem was actually discovered by another person who did the model, Dermin, in 2015. And their problem was that their model or formula did not actually integrate the fact that deposits or funds available to the banks, a portion of it goes into the reserve policy. Maybe if they get 1 million, 10% should go into, say, reserve, or depending on the reserve policy of the country, like here.
Okay.
So Dermin realized that and did a formula to correct that. But my work also had a problem with Dermin's work, where Dermin's formula did not also consider the fact that after the reserve, he said 10%, 12% deducted, and level say 90. His formula went all into the interbank market. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But banks do that, and they also give monies to somebody like you and companies, the risky investment areas or opportunities that attract a premium. So my formula actually takes care of all the relevant variables that we need in pricing assets in any competitive market. I'm not saying it solves the problem. There are people who are also asking, oh, is it tested? The fact is, my formula was actually marked by professor from Canada, assistant professor from Pakistan, Ghanaian professors. And formulas, you can, if I give you Tirana, you just put in Excel and input variables and see if they work. And my formula also gives some conditions that in risky whatever environment, we should always make sure that RP is greater than 0. That is, there's always a premium for risky assets. And also set conditions that banks should be careful how much of what they have goes into risky areas and also the market. Because sometimes if the risky areas poses this big threat of not even paying you have a lot of NPLs. What happens to your liquidity or your fund? Just as maybe happened to the banks, that some of them collapse. Some because of probably not due diligence or certificate. Some too because of mismanagement and corporate governance and stuff like that. So the formula is in there to help the banks and support the banks. But then, our policy makers and the relevant stakeholder bodies and individuals, after accepting these challenges, we should begin. It's not only this. There are things that are not basically even this technical thing I'm talking about. Asking yourself.
I don't want us to go into that detail.
Okay, sure.
Give me a second. Let me take a break. When we come back, I want people to chew on this for a second. When we come back, we'll come to the point about where exactly policy fits into all of this so that we can expand it nicely and continue the conversation. My guest is Dr. Stephen Acquah. Most of the time, he's member of Parliament for Industrialization. But today, it's his formula to fix that problem with credit access to you and I. That's our conversation. You're welcome back. My guest today is not talking partisan politics. He's a politician, though. He's a member of Parliament for Industrialization. He's also an academic of some standing. It's his formula to fix what's a very long-standing problem in our finances as a people. That is, why have we consistently crowded out the private sector? And why have we had the various institutions go to buy government's T-bills, treasury bills rather, than giving the money, most of it actually, because they give some money to the, yes, giving most of the money to the private sector? How do we fix this? Now, it's an interesting conversation also because a man who's managed this economy before, I was speaking to him earlier, he's just joined to chip in something briefly. But you were making a point. I want you to finish that point so that I'll bring you the Honorable Secretary.
That was a little bit outside what I was talking about. What I was saying is that the fundamentals are too many that I think some of them we don't have to be laboring or talking about for so long. For instance, let me give you this scenario. We have forest, semi-forest, savanna, semi-savanna, coastal belt. Each of these segments is highly endowed with commercially viable, wide range of fruits, suckers, tubers, natural resources. I don't want to go into the oils and the complex ones. These things I'm talking about, producing or making secondary values out of them, producing the juice or the final goods of product, it doesn't require any complex value chain. It's not complex. If I squeeze orange right now, add preservative, it's orange juice. So all that we need is the land that we need, which land it shouldn't be an issue in Ghana because they are just line item. 2, we only need big machines. Because for the labor force in terms of size and skill components,
they're already there.
We can just go and buy them. So why should we still, the same applies to wood product. Why are we still as a country importing these things? These are not the fundamentals.
Because we don't have the money to buy them or make them.
To do what machine?
To make them. No, I'm not talking about making these elements. I see we don't have the finances to be able to
import machines.
No, yes, do we?
Oh, I think it's I think in my opinion.
So if I'm a business,
it's a private sector.
Yes, to go and buy machines to come and do the things you're talking about.
I think as a country we need to, because the private sector actors, maybe my boss Tope will say this. If even whether in the CMPP they give 1 million each to 17 investors or entrepreneurs in Ghana, and the government doesn't get involved some way, somehow in the value chain processes, not the full control, and direct a lot of things. After 1 year, the money will go. I'm talking about 80% of them. So we have fundamental issues with the position or reposition of the private sector, which I agree. That is why I think as a country, we need to have a holistic approach by designing an entire value chain for each industries that we want to push money into and grow.
Okay.
Because the fruits are even Accra here, which is not forest.
You've been at Maslock, right?
Of course.
You are giving out money to especially some of these industries, if you want to call them.
But that was extremely, you see, our problem is also that the SMEs in Ghana occupies about almost 90%. Our systematic risk index is less than 1. And because of that, slowly it is affected by bigger picture of the economy. And because of that, if it's affected too, it takes a very slow way coming back. Maslock's target basically was, or broadly was, just very small businesses. Extremely. This one I'm talking about, probably something between small, medium, and the large, where maybe 20 people will be supported, each of them with about, say, 20,000 or 5,000 hectares of land to grow, say, orange. And together we can get 1 million tons, say, a year. We need machines, we need to do this. Ghana, we consume, say, 700. We can export 300. These things, in my opinion, not just by talking, because it's not complex. You don't need big technology. That is my concern. And I think...
But do you know why we are not doing that now?
I think because... it's very difficult. No,
I mean, being honest and telling us straight to the face.
I'm being honest,
yes.
But what I'm saying is, every developing economy that is endowed with raw materials, natural resources, the best way to go is industrialization.
We get that. And we've been talking about that long time ago.
The industrialization just has been actually exercised by my government, 100%. But my concern is that what goes into it before we roll out with the prospective beneficiaries. For instance, if maybe Chinese or even the developed economies had decided to do this, because our private sector actors, to me, are not there yet, what should have been done was to properly, officially design these value chains for them, so that if you want to do mangoes, from inbound, which is from raw materials or getting from the farms or growing them, processing and doing this, what kind of machine, what kind of labor force we need, what kind of with the market, getting standard authorities.
They should all be set out for you.
Should be designed well for you, and then get maybe government official or somebody or a third body, because we have given that person money, to be part of monitoring the processes and controlling them and making sure they get to the end where we can produce and get our target.
This proposal, have you made it to government?
Don't limit this to one government.
No,
that one you're pushing. It's a general issue.
I'm talking about solutions now. I'm not going to talk about...
I get your point.
So, yes, I'm saying, have you made it to government? You are in government. You're a member of parliament. I think you're on the finance committee.
I think every organization...
Yes.
We have... That's what they call division of labor. You have your jurisdiction, what you can do.
No, but you've not answered the main question. Have you made these proposals to government?
I think it's something I've been talking about it for about 10 years now. Not only now. About 10 years, 15 years.
This predates when the government came into power.
Well, you found what I'm saying very important?
Yes, I found it very important.
I think everybody knows this. No, only
yes.
A lot of people know
so
this.
why are we not fixing it? Because you have some ideas.
I also think in the developing economy, sometimes configuration of key resources and core competences. You see where you are sitting.
Yeah.
I don't know your level. Maybe you even studied more than I do. Maybe just by the grace, that illiterate child, I'm where I am. But in spite of the fact I have PhD or whatever, your work, if you put me, I'll fail. See the way you're asking your question, I'll fail. I cannot do it. Sometimes I think in our jurisdiction, not one government or two, who can do what best, we should also check that. I don't want to go into details.
How does it apply now? What you're saying, how does it apply?
How can you say it apply? For this, how do you want me to say it? That who can do what best? You want me to go do what? Look, if you have...
But the question I'm asking is
but I've answered you. Yeah. First one is, to me, designing the needed value chains complete for our private sector before we push in money, and also make sure we super. That's one. Two, configuration of key resources, core competences. You have the best policy, the best framework, the most attracted and acceptable vision, but to roll out along the value chain, all segments, you need the right actors or people to act. If not, it will not work.
So don't put square holes in round holes. Don't put square.
Simple, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, pegs in
sometimes it also happens. Sometimes, and sometimes the bigger picture of our culture, which is not today or yesterday, makes it difficult to quickly get into these areas. Because problems have been developed over the like 40 years. Sometimes because our economy now has gotten to the level that almost everything is controlled by external forces and market. It's very difficult. But we can start somewhere. For instance, the pricing thing I'm talking about. For instance, the orange thing I'm talking about. What will be so wrong that we wake up one day, policymakers, each region, they know what can be grown there, identify owners of the land, get private sectors who are going to work, form that kind of thing with the owners, private sector and government, get a machine and say that at least for pawpaw, for mango, for orange, for this, they are easy to produce.
That's a point.
We can export them.
Let me just hear quickly from the former finance minister. Mr. Takpe, your point.
Well, thank you very much. I think the honorable minister is...
I'm not. As he's a member of parliament.
I'm MPO. I'm not there. Yes,
I'm sure you accept your prophecy.
No.
I met MP. I know him as an MP. Sorry about that.
Yes, boss.
Well, he says something very important. Let me be very quick. You know, the point he's making in terms of riskiness is the point where the advanced countries and middle income countries reach, and they say the market has inverted. You know, where the bills and the bonds that are expected to yield more begin to yield less. And that is a signal. In the US, for example, it's a signal that the financial markets are getting into trouble, and it's something that they watch carefully. Now, the point I want to make is that the practical reason, and I'm not, a PhD theoretician, and all that, but it's I've followed some of work. Now, the main reason we have that in Ghana is that the T-bill is supposed to be for liquidity, and that's why it's for 91 days. But come the 91 days, we do not redeem them. Then we refinance, and then we add it to new, T-bills, and then we continue and continue. So when you take the cumulative effect of 91-day bills, which you are rolling over, that's when you have a rollover risk. It becomes long-term bonds, and that is the reason why the interest rates then go. And the government bonds are supposed to be safer. Now, the practical solution was, if you recall, in 2015, the entire $1 billion US dollar bond that we made with the World Bank guarantee was used to take off our 90-day and 2-year short-term bonds, including some of the medium-term, like 3-year and 5-year, that we kept rolling over. And then we refinanced all of those, stretched them over a period of 10 years. And that is how the sinking fund came in, so that the sinking fund will pay them down. If you do not pay them down, and that is where, sorry, I'm just ending. That is where we are now with our sovereign bonds. The fact that you just kept refinancing them, you did not use the sinking fund to reduce them, is the reason they have become risky and they are at category C.
Thank you so much. I need to wrap up with you. Do you have any response to this, or we should move on?
I think what he's saying supports what I'm
basically
saying.
That's what actually.
But one thing that he has said that I even didn't know, and now I know, because I'm going to push these issues, is the fact that because they roll over T-bills, probably, if I heard him right, it kind of bringing more risk, and because at that level, unless I didn't understand, because of that risk inherent or default or whatever, it makes the returns or the costs also go up. That is what he said, if it's true. But I think he accepts the fact that in the developed economies and the middle whatever income whatever countries at the upper level, they do the right thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So my concern is that as a country, all stakeholders must come on board. And be honest with you, even if we want to really do critical analysis, in times such as this, even our GDP values can be questioned. Because bank valuations, if is it underpriced to actually support arbitrage or arbitrages, those who get opportunities without risk, going through risk, and they are few or whatever, what happens is that valuation of banks can be questioned. And these valuations are integrated in our GDPs. So I think we need to sit down, start analyzing a lot of things. And the banks are making huge profits. I'm not saying they shouldn't make profit, but they're also making big profits.
Legitimately?
Oh, of course, like they don't steal money. Banks will not steal. But at least we can. And one problem we have is also because we also tout ourselves as absolutely free market economy. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? So you cannot touch somebody's profitability in terms of policies and other things. But I think as a country, we can run mixed market economy where areas of cartel, monopoly, and oligopoly, we can have price caps, not necessarily to force control. You understand what I'm saying? Because that we have in Europe, you have something impasse effect. That is when the market rate goes like 1%. What happens to probably deposit rate? Is it 2 or 1? Because there's elasticity. I use elasticity for my formula. Of course, based on other things, separation theorems and stuff like that. But the point I'm making is that once we accept these challenges, what can we do? What should we do? As a country, all stakeholders should come on board. Join me. Let's all find a way of working towards achieving what we want to achieve so that we will stop always depend on somebody's market.
I get you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of UPfront. Many thanks to you.
Was it good?